Hey, you've arrived at the process. This is Dr. John Bush. This is lessons that are specific for 2021, at least the early part. I'm going to hit something called defense against the position, and this is part one of that approach. And let's get started. So what I'm showing here is my version of defense against the position, and I'm looking at overall uh, a team's defense against the position. It's called offense DAP, so I called it defense against position. It's a DAP. Uh, Running back DAPs, quarterback DAP, wide receiver DAP, tight end DAP, kicker, and actually defense DAP. So how does the team do against the opponent's defense? So this is how the team's defenses behave against their opponent's positions. Okay. So obviously, in your lineup decisions, it's good to find those hot spots, the spots where the defense against position is high. In other words, the defense lets lots of points go, and so my scale is, uh, and I know it's kind of opposite here, but for instance, Detroit is 104 overall defense DAP. So they are predicted to be for 2021 the weakest team anybody will face. So you should start many, obviously your number ones, but number twos, and even in your flexes. Opponents facing Detroit would, have extra appeal. Houston, Tennessee, Seattle, Jacksonville, the Jets, Dallas, the Raiders, and Atlanta are all the weakest, predicted weakest teams. And then the strongest teams, the ones you would probably not want to certainly play in your flex if your team is playing or your players playing against San Francisco, Green Bay, New England, Pittsburgh, Washington, New Orleans, or the Rams. Okay, and then so I've got those are the deep red. Those are in trouble. So if you think about it, red is a concern. Green means go, right? So you can now set your lineup, and then if you've got any ties or any kind of questions, this kind of material can break ties and be useful certainly early in the season. And for daily fantasy sports as well, you could use this in picking maybe cheap players that could surprise based on a great lineup here, a great offensive DAP here. And so I've circled in purple the weakest teams against the running back: Detroit, Houston, Tennessee, Jacksonville, and the Raiders. So if you have running backs, you want your running backs to play against those teams. If you have quarterbacks, you want to go against Detroit, Tennessee, Seattle, Jacksonville, or Atlanta. Wide receivers, you want your wide receivers to go against Detroit, Tennessee, Seattle, Dallas, or Atlanta. And your tight ends, it's not quite falling like you would predict here. The Jets are the easiest. Atlanta, Cleveland, Arizona, and Indianapolis, rather highly thought of defense, leaks like a sieve against the tight ends. And of course, the opposite would be when you see a zero or a low number. That's not good news for your players here. So my data is based on last year. Okay, people say, "What's last year?" What else do we have right now? Okay, so just realize until we have probably 3 games or so, we don't have any insight too much. I mean, people that are experts in IDP probably have an advantage here early in the season. And if I was putting together a daily fantasy sports syndicate to try to play big money and make big money, I would definitely want an IDP player, expert, a specialist on my team to help with things like this. And I think you can have an advantage early. So what I'm going to do in these block of material here is kind of set us up for the first couple of games early in 2021. And then once, probably about week 3, week 4, I'll have enough that I will completely revamp the DAPS. So this chart will go away and I will create a new chart based on the reality. And of course, every week I will manipulate the data and re-up the chart. So I should get better and better, of course, as the season goes along. Of course, everybody will, and the pundits and whatnot will as well. So this becomes a hot thing. But right now, early, first game or 2 or 3, this is all we have to go on here. So I'm going to set these figures up on my fake pigskin article here, trying to get it out this week, and as soon as I can, actually, because I know people are drafting even as we speak. I feel the drafts happening. Okay, so this is a way to gauge kind of a landscape of what your players will face depending on the teams that are your opponents here. So I took the bar graph of each of these teams' DAPs: offensive DAP, running back, quarterback, wide receiver, and tight end. And I just said, here's 50%. So anything above 50 is thought to be easy. Anything below is thought to be tougher, right? So that's just kind of a rule of thumb, heuristics that you can apply here. And I did mark each team by their toughest play. So Detroit, they're pretty easy, but they are strong against the tight end relative to everybody else. Okay? Houston, strong against the tight end. Tennessee, strong against the tight end. Seattle, strong against the running back. Okay? Jackson is tight end. New York Jets, running back. This is tight end, running back. Look at Atlanta. Atlanta can will leak like a sieve against the opponent's wide receivers, but their running backs, they tend to plug up the holes and do well. So you see right there, that changes the landscape that people might consider. Most people, it's an easy, a hard defense, and they behave accordingly. I try to break it down by position, DAPS, defense against the position here. So here's another one: Cleveland, Cincinnati, Philadelphia, all are toughest against the running back. Minnesota tends to be pretty rough against the quarterback, so that's kind of unusual, and tight end. And this is wide receiver. So Buffalo really shuts down the opponent's wide receivers, and so do the Chargers. So that's interesting to me and something you should note. Here we go. And you notice that the number of DAPs are starting to hit below 50 because we're going down the list from the easiest to the hardest team. So this is kind of that tier above the toughest teams right here. The Giants, quarterbacks, tough. Kansas City plays wide receivers, tough. Tampa Bay is running backs. Carolina wide receivers. Denver wide receivers. Miami running back. Indianapolis is the tight end. Chicago is the running back. And Baltimore is the wide receiver. So what I notice as we go from the easiest down here to the little bit harder, some of the easiest teams are toughest against the tight ends. Go back to the slides before. So that there's probably something there. I'm not sure what it means, but it probably means something. So that's an area of research I need to think about. These are the toughest, dreaded, toughest teams. So in the first couple weeks, be aware if your players are playing against Frisco, Green Bay, New England, Pittsburgh, Washington, New Orleans, or the Rams. San Francisco is especially tough on the quarterback. Green Bay is tough on the wide receivers. So they play New Orleans. I know that. Michael Thomas, if he's not there, that's going to put a lot of pressure on New Orleans to deal with a tough defense. And notice that Green Bay, if you match up to New Orleans, look at the running back. It's the easiest. So you would predict that New Orleans will attack Green Bay with Kamara and Murray, right? Okay. So if you look at New Orleans, they're toughest against the running back. So Aaron Jones is going to have a tougher. So the easiest are the wide receivers and tight ends. So probably there's going to be more passing than one might think. So that's the matchup beauty of using DAPS, is it gives you some way to visualize the game script. I think using this plus Vegas over and under numbers, I think gives you a really interesting I'm sorry, insight into the game. So I'm going to try to set up and look at the different games using the DAPS as well as my rankings, and try to use that to my advantage, especially in daily fantasy sports. This can really be of interest. I think you combine it with the Vegas information, I think you can get a nice game script view. So I like to do ratios just kind of for me to consider. So I did something called running back wide receiver ratio. So is there a rushing, passing kind of thing happening with the team's defense? So if you use a bar graph on this ratio that I calculated, we find that the Rams tend to be very easy compared to the wide receivers. So if you attack the Rams, use your running backs. Green Bay, use your running backs. Kansas City, Denver, the Chargers. Okay. If you want to attack New Orleans, you need to use your wide receivers. What about Atlanta? Wide receivers. Pittsburgh, use your wide receivers. Tampa Bay, use your wide receivers. I know there's more players on the team than running backs and wide receivers. Okay, but it gives us a view of how this can go down. So definitely use this material to plot your strategy for week one, in your daily fantasy sports as well. I think it's good stuff. And I also did a ratio of running back to tight end. And if you're going against Frisco, they're really easy on running backs versus tight ends. So they're probably tougher on tight ends. New England, Green Bay, Detroit, Houston, Denver, Indianapolis, and the Raiders are easy on the running backs versus the tight ends, right? So if you've got a running back and a tight end that's playing one of these teams, you would go to the running back versus the tight end. And the flip side of that is tight ends versus running backs. You will go to the tight end if you're playing New Orleans, Atlanta, Chicago, Tampa Bay, Philadelphia, etc. And notice in the middle here, I'm looking at the extremes. Okay, that's what I would suggest you use as the extremes here. Okay, this is part one. I'll have some more coming up. We'll do part two, etc. Come back. This is the process. My name's Dr. John Bush.